On this episode of Beatle News Briefs, we welcome our special guest, Don Dannemann of The Cyrkle, who talks about their big 60s hits, being managed by Brian Epstein, and touring with the Beatles. Here we go.
We welcome the Beatles!
Hi everybody, this is John here. This is Paul, George,
and Ringo.
and we're very happy to be on your program once again.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to show number 82 of Beatle News Briefs. I'm your host, Steve Marinucci, and I hope you're all staying safe. On today's show, we have a very special guest, Don Dannemann of The Cyrkle. The Cyrkle had two big top 20 hits in 1966. Red Rubber Ball, which was written by Paul Simon, and Turn Down Day. Well, something that Beatle fans might not be aware of, at least not all Beatle fans, is that they were managed for a time by Brian Epstein. And Don Dannemann talks about how they got together with Brian Epstein and how they were also on tour with the Beatles and what it was like being on tour as a support band for the Beatles. So here goes this interview. This is a delightful interview, and we hope you enjoy it. We're talking with Don Dannemann of The Cyrkle, who, if you are a 60s music fan, as I presume you all are, remember Red Rubber Ball and Turn Down Day, their hits. But they also had some very big interaction with the Beatles. They toured with the Beatles. They were managed by Brian Epstein. And we're gonna talk with Don Dannemann about this. Hello, Don. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Steve. Good to be here.
Let's start with the what came first? Did the meetup with Brian Epstein come first, or did Red Rubber Ball come first?
No, the meeting with Brian Epstein came first.
Okay.
And basically, the story behind that, and, cut me off if I'm going too long on stuff, but here's the story behind that. The Rondells, a college fraternity band from Lafayette College, starting in 1961, and a really good fraternity band. We played in Atlantic City 2 summers, the summer of 64 and summer of 65.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the summer of 65, when we were basically going to go our separate ways, right at the end of the summer, a gentleman named Nat Weiss came into the Alibi Bar where we were playing in Atlantic City, and he heard us, and he introduced himself. Hey, my name is Nat Weiss. I'm a matrimonial lawyer, but I am a good friend of Beatle manager Brian Epstein, and you guys are really good. And we are actually starting a management company here in the States. Brian and I will be partners. And I think you're really good. Why don't you contact me, and maybe we'll get something going. So we thought, baloney. We've heard a lot of that nonsense. No way. Anyway, so the summer ends.
When was this? Was this
65?
That was 65.
Summer of 65.
Okay.
Okay.
All
right. So now, summer ends. Of the 4 of us, I am now working for my dad in the sheet metal factory. Tom and Marty are still back at Lafayette. Tom had 6 months to go. Marty had a year to go. And Earl, original keyboard player, was off in medical school. And I just thought, he gave me a card. Why don't I call him and, see if it's maybe real? So I called Nat Weiss, and he remembered me. Oh, yeah, Don, hi, how are you? Yeah. Hey, why don't you come down to the city? Now, I'm living with my folks in Eastchester, New York, a suburb of New York. Mm-hmm. And Nat lived in the city, and he says, yeah, come on down. I'll introduce you to Brian. So I light up, really? Okay. He gave me a time and an address. and it was on the Upper East Side of Manhattan. It was a walk-up. It was like the second floor of a small building. Went down with a buddy of mine. We go, and there's a party. Nat is not there, but there's a party. We walk in, and we're hanging around, and we're both kind of shy, so, we're not talking hardly to anybody except each other. Anyway, a little time goes by, and in walks Nat. I go up to him. Oh, yeah, Don, come on. I'm going to introduce you to Brian. I follow Nat downstairs, and there, right outside the door, parked on the street, is a limo. And Nat, in a very dramatic pose, he opens the door, and with his hands, he beckons me into the limo. And I go into the limo, and he sits me down, and there I am sitting across from Brian Epstein. So I'm trying to be cool, and Nat introduces me, all right? Mm-hmm. So whenever I tell this, I have to say, this is going to sound like I'm really bragging, so I'm not what Nat introduced me as. Let's just leave it at that, and now I'll tell you how Nat introduces me. He goes, Brian Epstein, I would like you to meet Don Dannemann, one of the finest musicians I know. Well, I gulped. I mean, I'm okay. I'm a pretty decent guitar player. The finest, probably not. Anyway, I got to shake Brian's hand, and we did a short exchange. Brian, wow, we're such Beatles fans, and it's so great to meet you. And if we can get something going, that would be wonderful. With our band. Mm-hmm. So it was short, and Brian was a true gentleman. Anytime in all the interactions we've had with him, he was always a really nice person and very accommodating. And it was sort of along the lines of, oh, Don, yes, it's great to meet you, Nat. Nat has spoken very highly of you, and perhaps we can get something going. So anyway, after a short back and forth exchange, Nat, in the same dramatic way that he beckoned me into the limo, he beckoned me out with his hands, So out I went. I'm now standing on the street, door closes, and I picture this as a video movie being shot. The camera is behind me, so you see me kind of in silhouette. It's kind of, it's at night. And the limo slowly pulls off down the street, disappears into the darkness, and then fade out. So obviously this was a huge deal. I just met Brian Epstein. Nat is for real. I called the guys at Lafayette, Tom and Marty, who were still at Lafayette, like I say. I said, hey, guys, this is real. I just met Brian Epstein. So this got us to set up a makeshift recording studio with our own personal couple of tape recorders that we had and our mixers that we had for the band, a mic mixer. And we recorded a couple of demos. And I made an appointment to play those demos for Nat. And interestingly enough, just as a quick side, the day that I had the appointment to play these demos for Nat, anybody from that time will know exactly what I'm talking about. But what happened was that was the day when the whole East Coast had a blackout.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I was living there at the time. Yes. Oh yes.
Okay, well that was the date. So obviously I didn't get to do it then, but I got to do it a few days later. So I lugged my tape recorder to Nat's apartment on the Upper East Side in New York, and I had the tape recorder, and this is before little devices that we now have. This was a tape recorder. I had a lug. It was heavy. And I had wires to plug it into Nat's stereo system, and I also brought a pair of stereo headphones. Now, stereo headphones were comparatively new at the time. Most people had not heard them. And when I was setting up, I said, oh, Nat, you know what? Why don't you listen through these stereo headphones? It'll be a new thing for you. And, you hear it a little bit better. Now, Nat had never heard stereo headphones. So when I hit play on the tape recorder, and Nat is now listening to our demos through stereo headphones, and I saw his eyes kind of go up to the ceiling. I said, So I kind of thought, oh, wow, I think we got him. I think he's inspired. And in all fairness, the demos were pretty good, but we had the advantage of stereo headphones. So Nat got that inspired him, and he got us some bookings at clubs in the city. And Tom and Marty and I were playing as a trio at this time. I would go back to Lafayette on occasional weekends, and we would still play. So we came in, and we were playing as a trio, and that got us some gigs in the city, got us some auditions for record companies, and we ended up now with a Columbia record contract, a young producer at Columbia named John Simon, who became our producer. He was interested in us. We got signed to Nemperor Artists, their company,
Right.
Brian with Nat, and that's what got the ball rolling.
What? Let me ask a couple of questions. First of all, what were the demos? Do you remember the names of the songs?
Let me think. One was called Money to Burn. And it was actually pretty good.
Okay. I just happened to look up the date of the blackout. It's November 9th. Being that all of Brian Epstein's artists were basically affiliated with Parlophone / Capitol, why did you end up going with Columbia rather than Capitol? Or was it just the way it was, or?
I can only tell you that we auditioned for several record companies. I remember specifically one of the auditions was RCA, and they didn't want us, and then we auditioned for Columbia, and I think it was probably very much because of the association with Brian Epstein that they got enthusiastic, and that and that's what got that ball rolling. So it was a major deal to be associated with Brian Epstein.
Okay. All right. So you've got the contract.
Yep.
And so what happened? Is that when Red Rubber Ball was released?
Well, so now we had a contract, and we needed. Obviously, we needed stuff to record. And once again, I don't know why we didn't record Money to Burn as that first one, because it was actually pretty good. Anyway, we are now at the point of hanging around the Village in New York.
Okay.
And we're now looking for material to record. And Tommy Dawes met a gentleman named Barry Kornfeld, who had a publishing company with Paul Simon.
Okay.
And that's where we heard Red Rubber Ball. We got it on, a scratched 45 record, and it was Paul singing with just a guitar, and Tommy heard it through Barry Kornfeld, and we all listened to it, and everybody thought, yeah, that's kind of cute. Let's try that. So that's where Red Rubber Ball came from. Now, we did record other stuff, I think, at the same time. Once again, a little vague memory there of what we did, but Red Rubber Ball obviously got recorded, and everybody said that's what's going to come out.
Okay. And you also did another Paul Simon song. You did Cloudy, too.
Yeah, now that was later on.
Oh, okay.
That was we did several. We did Cloudy, we did I Wish You Could Be Here. That was a Paul Simon song also.
Okay. Did you guys have any interaction with Paul at that time, or did you know him, or?
Yeah, we did have some interaction. And actually the biggest interaction was Tommy, actually, because after Red Rubber Ball was recorded, I now went into the Coast Guard Reserve active duty. And Red Rubber Ball actually became a hit while I was on active duty in the Coast Guard Reserve.
That must have been must have been fun.
Well, it was really strange because I could give you a few little tidbits on that one. So here I am in boot camp. where you don't have much, you could make some phone calls, but basically boot camp, you're gone from the outside world. This
Right.
was in Cape May, New Jersey. Well, I was contacted by Nat, who said, hey, if you can get a pass, we have an opportunity to do Hullabaloo, the TV show Hullabaloo. And I begged them. I said, I went to them. I said, oh, please, I have this opportunity. Can you do it? And I have kudos to the Coast Guard Reserve people. They were really nice on a couple of levels. And in this particular one, they said, okay, you can get a 3-day pass. We're going to let you go. So this, I think, is March of 66.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Red Rubber Ball was recorded already, and I'm in boot camp. And they let me go. I took a bus, and we recorded in the Hullabaloo was, I think, it was in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
So I was gone for 3 days. And whenever you look up The Cyrkle Red Rubber Ball, and the one that usually shows up on YouTube is that performance.
Okay. Was it? I think I saw a clip of it last night. It was just the group. It
was the three of us.
Right. Did anybody introduce you?
Oh, yeah, Paul Anka.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the host of that particular show was Paul Anka.
Okay.
And he introduced us as related to the Beatles because of the Brian Epstein connection. And he made a thing out of that, and he says, and here they are with their new song, Red Rubber Ball. And it was it went really well. They set us up nicely. We sang along with the record. So when you see that performance, you are hearing the record, but you're also hearing some of our live voices singing along with it. And you hear a little bit, I think, of the audience clapping along. That's my recollection of how that went. But that was a real, that was a great way to introduce Red Rubber Ball to the country. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Was that the? Did you guys also do Shindig at a later time or?
No, never did Shindig. And the thing that really I'm disappointed about, as I think back, is I don't understand why we never did Bandstand.
Ooh.
Because it was a logical thing. We had a hit record. How could we not have done Bandstand? Anyway, we didn't.
You were never approached by Dick Clark to do it?
Well, personally, no. But whether Nat was, because Nat manned the office in New York. Brian was in and out. Nat was kind of the hands-on guy.
Okay.
Usually, and I don't know if he was ever approached or not. Yeah, I don't know that.
Because that would have been, you would have been natural for that. I mean, that would have been.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It was. I can't understand why we never did.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, so you've got the record. It's being played on the radio. Now, how did the touring thing with the Beatles come up?
Well, this is another good one. At least I get a kick out of it. So here I am. I'm still in Coast Guard boot camp. Now, boot camp ended. And once again, thank you, Coast Guard. Because everybody from my week of boot camp, when we got out of boot camp, they went on a Coast Guard cutter, which means you're gone. You're out to sea and you're gone. And I begged them. I said, please, can you get me somewhere in New York where I can, not be gone? And I think, and I even offered, I said, and you know what, and we'll play at the Officers Club, whatever you need, we'll do that. And they did, they said, okay. They put me on a buoy tender on Staten Island. Mm-hmm. So I am now on a buoy tender, washing pots and pans, mess cook on a buoy tender, and at night I would take the ferry, go into the city, and we'd record. And sometimes I was up all night. I'd get back just in time to, sign in and be on duty and wash pots and pans. And I was able to get off most weekends where we could play. So once again, thank you, Coast Guard. And my experience is kind of nice, So anyway, we now find out because. yes, I'm on the buoy tender, but I'm also back and forth in New York. So there's communication back and forth, and we find out that we have been invited to do the Beatles tour.
Right.
The Beatles tour started a month before I was getting out. So they were actually in the process of trying to replace me for the Beatles tour, because how could they turn the Beatles tour down, you know?
Right.
Anyway, my analogy for this is, you all heard of Andy Warhol's 15 Minutes of Fame?
Oh, yes.
Where, you know, and it's kind of like, if you're having your 15 minutes of fame, it's kind of like everything goes right. Well, in this case, we were evidently in the middle of Andy Warhol's 15 Minutes of Fame, and everything went right, because what happened was the government decided that 6 months was now going to be 5, out of the blue, which means I got out in time to do the Beatles tour. I didn't have to ask for any favors or anything. It's like I was out, we were able to do the Beatles tour, so that was a thrill. So that's how, so we got invited, I was able to do it, and in this case it was myself, Tom, Marty, and Earl, who was in medical school, now had the summer off, and he was still our keyboard player, at least officially, and so it was the 4 of us.
Okay.
And we did the whole tour, yeah.
And so, at what position did you have on the bill? Where did you come in? In other words,
I think. Okay, here's what I'm going to say, because this is also, there's some memories that are really clear and some that are not. I think that we maybe were not immediately before them. It may have been the Ronettes that followed us, because, and I'm thinking maybe they wanted to break up all guys, you know, and have some girls before the Beatles came on, but not sure. I'm actually not sure. But I can tell you that, because I remember pretty clearly, when we went on at the first performance, and this was in Chicago, and we were so afraid to go on, because it's like, oh, they're just going to yell for the Beatles. We want the Beatles, boo, get them off, get them off. And we went on, and we were so pleased to hear the reception, because we did actually have 2 hit records at the time. Red Rubber Ball was, you know, had peaked, and Turn Down Day was just coming up. And everybody whooped and hollered and cheered, and it was actually pretty cool. We had a really nice reception, and it was a successful performance. So, yeah, it was great.
What you are about to hear is an audience recording of a portion of The Cyrkle playing Red Rubber Ball live in Toronto in 1966. The quality is not very good, and we had to boost the level for you to hear it better. But this is just an example of The Cyrkle playing live on the Beatles tour. We thank Don Dannemann for allowing us to use this. It says in Wikipedia, when you played Dodger Stadium, the other acts were Bobby Hebb, the Ronettes, and the Remains. Is that?
Yeah, and that was the whole tour was that. Yeah.
Okay. And
so that's correct.
And they also said you played at Candlestick for that show.
Yeah, well, we did the whole tour.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. Yeah. So any of those tours we were on. Yeah.
Did you have any interaction with the Beatles on those nights?
Oh yeah. Yeah. The first interaction was on the plane before we had met them.
Mm-hmm.
And so here we are. We're on this is the first plane, and I guess it was from New York to Chicago,
Mm-hmm.
and the entire tour, like the band support people and press people, were in the same plane with the Beatles behind a wall in the back. So we're like, oh, are we going to meet them? Are they going to come out? What's going on? And I'm sitting next to Nat Weiss and bandmate Tommy Dawes, and we were towards the front of the plane, and we keep looking back. Anyway, finally, well into the flight, the door opens, and I actually do this in the show with a big dramatic gesture. The door opens, and my arms go wide. There's Paul, and we're like, okay, let's be cool, So Paul turned out to be a really nice guy, and whenever you see him in any interviews he does or anything like that, that's kind of how he is. He's just very jovial and smiley, and you could see he's shaking hands and he's talking to people. Some obviously he knows, and some he's meeting for the first time. Just nice guy. Anyway, he finally gets to us. Now Nat knows him, and he introduces us. Don Dannemann, meet Paul McCartney, and got to shake hands, couple of words back and forth, short interaction.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy Dawes, meet Paul McCartney, same thing. And then Paul, well, okay, good to meet you guys, we'll see you around, and off he goes back behind the wall. And Tommy and I talked and analyzed every little word that got said. Like, why couldn't we have been cooler and make him talk longer, like that? But anyway, yes, we did meet him later on, and we got to hang out, and it was just, general chit-chat with hanging out with them.
Did you find the other guys just as nice to get along with too?
Yeah, actually, it was all, very pleasant. I mean, I'll give you an example. Let's see, the first meeting where we actually met them in the locker room. They actually invited us back. It was the official invitation. Now, this was, I don't think this took place until about the third show. Mm-hmm. So we had now seen them on stage, and obviously from right backstage or right in front, depending on the venue. But so we had now seen them, but so far we had only met Paul. And now we actually got a formal invitation. The boys will see you now. Come on back. So my personal recollection is, Don Dannemann meet Ringo, Don Dannemann meet John, Don Dannemann, here's Paul again. So I ended up actually having a lovely conversation with George, who turns out to be just a warm, sweet guy, who is very comfortable sharing his own stuff and comfortable listening to you and who you are and all. And we got into a conversation where he basically shared that, I'm still pinching myself. I can't believe that, this is happening.
Right.
I mean, even though this is now, because they're now a couple of years into their celebrityness.
Right.
But he didn't forget, he was like, yeah, I'm just this guy from Liverpool, and, it's just amazing what's happening. And, you're telling me like, yeah, you guys went to college and you were a college band and you're now having this success. Good luck. And he was a really sweet guy, just warm. He would look you right in the eye. We could look each other right in the eye, and we're just two guys, like in this thing here, and it's really cool.
That did that conversation have any? Was that the ground for you guys later doing "I'm Happy Just to Dance with You" on the Neon album?
No, actually, the conversation was not specifically related to that. It's just that we were looking to, we're always looking to record stuff, and we thought this would be an interesting thing to record. And actually, we had, and I think, wait a minute, I have right in front of me here the albums. And I'm going to check something. Wait, Money, Cloudy, How Can We Leave in This Fire? Big Little Woman. I know that we had comments from Paul McCartney about changing, all the key changes in Happy Just to Dance with You.
Oh, okay.
Because we had a whole bunch of. Wait a minute, it doesn't matter if it's I'm happy. I'm looking at the Neon album.
Yeah, you did. Your version was not a straight ahead version. It was, you really reworked it a little bit.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Anyway, yes, it is on the Neon album.
Right.
But somewhere there was somewhere I know that we had some conversation with Paul McCartney about, boy, you did all those key changes on Happy Just to Dance with You. We had a little bit of laugh on that. Conversations with John Lennon always were along the lines of, well, guys, have you learned to spell yet? Because it was John that gave us our name. Here we are in the studio, and this is the early days of the Columbia record contract. So here we are, new Columbia record contract, management contract with NEMPER, Brian Epstein and Nat, and we still needed a name. We were still the Rondells at Lafayette College.
Okay.
And now, so what's our name going to be? So we're in the studio, and Brian comes up to me. He says, "Oh, Don," I'm going to try and imitate Brian. I can't. I mean, obviously, he doesn't sound quite like this, but it's right. Fun for me to try and, once again, a very gentlemanly delivery. "Oh, Don, take a look at this," and he hands me his business card. And I see on the business card, it's a regular business card. It says Brian Epstein on it. He says, no, turn it over. I turn the card over, and it's like, there's some scribbling on it. Sir, Kurt. No, I'm sorry, Brian. What am I reading here? He says, "Oh, Don, this is your new name, and it's The Cyrkle, and as you see, it's the funny spelling." And it was, when I was back in Britain, I asked the boys, as they were, the Beatles were lovingly referred to as the boys.
Right.
I asked the boys, "Hey, we have a new American group, and we need an interesting name. Anybody have any ideas?" And it was John that came up with The Cyrkle, and as you can imagine, John's mind. He's the one that came up with the funny spelling.
Right.
And so here I am with this card in my hand that probably is worth, I don't know, thousands of dollars today to have that card. That went in the trash the next day. I was so annoyed at myself for that. But we found out one interesting thing because I've been telling this story for years, about how we got it, and it's true. Mm-hmm. But we actually found one addendum to the story, and this was last year. Let me think about this. In, I think it might have been June, it was in Charlotte at a Beatles convention, actually, that we attended. And the fella they ran the video of Hullabaloo. Since I was there, they ran the video of the Hullabaloo show, and we got to chatting with the guy who was running the video, who was a Beatles fan. It turns out, he was there running the video, but he also was a Beatles fan, and he told us, and we did not know this, that one of the Beatles albums that had been recently released. And I'm not sure which one it was, but it was one of the huge, big albums everybody knows. One of the possible names for the album was The Cyrkle, or A Circle. It had the word circle in it. And so we realized that John had that circle in his head. And he put that into, why don't we name this group the Cyrkle and give it a funny spelling? So that was a new thing that came up, which we didn't realize. But anyway, that's how we got the name. The Cyrkle came from John, presented to us by Brian in the studio at Columbia Record Studios.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
a great story.
It is. The Beatles connection that we have is so cool, and it is so fun to talk about it. So many years later, when so many people still love the Beatles, and they're still in our age range, and even through the whole age range.
Right.
They're so great, and the fact that we had that association, very cool, very cool.
What was it like standing on a stage having all those girls scream? Because they were screaming not only for you guys, but they were, what was it like standing on that stage playing to that audience?
Well, I'm going to answer your question a little differently. Here's a little take of girls screaming. I'm going back. This is the first concert. We had finished performing, and the Beatles were now coming on stage, and I am standing. This was, I believe it was a hockey arena. Anyway, it was the type of arena, or basketball, where it's kind of a long, shape, and it was inside. So the stage is toward the end, and I was standing just backstage, off a touch to the side, but basically right backstage. And I can now look right down on the Beatles and look right out at the audience. And two things that really just struck me. The noise level was so loud and contained because it was inside. The noise couldn't go up to the sky. It was inside, so it would go up, bounce down. It was really very loud. And it was so emotional, and I'm looking there was a lady standing next to me. I didn't know her, but I'm guessing she was from the press corps. A little older than me. I'm guessing she was maybe mid-30s or so. Mm-hmm. And she was basically just crying, tears just streaming down her face. It was just the emotion of the whole thing. Mm. But the other thing, when you talk about girls screaming, as I looked out to the audience, I want you to picture the Wizard of Oz back behind the stage with an electronic machine where all he had to do was push a button and an electric shock would go out to various seats in the audience. Mm-hmm. And you could look out and just see, as I looked out, just nonstop, bump, 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 bump. Girls would just leap out of their seats. Wow. As if they had an electric shock. Like the Wizard of Oz, he pushed that button, he pushed that one. As far as I could see, and when you're backstage, you can't see that far, but I could see into the audience. I just, jump. Just an amazing experience of watching the emotion of this event. Very cool.
By the time you got to San Francisco, were you aware that they had become dissatisfied with touring and that was probably going to be the very last live show they did?
Yeah, we actually did have a subtle awareness of that, and it was one of the things was I know that George had mentioned something about being tired of touring, and he was actually taking pictures. And what we got to understand from him was like, maybe this isn't going to happen anymore, and just going to have some personal pictures of this. So yes, we did have a sense that might be the case. Yeah, it was mentioned.
Did you take a lot of pictures?
No. Here's where we made a huge mistake. We thought that we didn't want to be looked at by the Beatles as like fans, silly fans, mm-hmm. taking advantage of the fact that we were now with them. So, for instance, on the last plane ride of the tour after Candlestick, the last plane ride where everyone was together everyone was being left off back in L.A. Mm-hmm. So on that last plane ride, everybody took pictures with the Beatles, and they were very comfortable to pose for pictures. Everybody was taking pictures except us. We didn't take pictures. So What can I tell you? And I know that I haven't done it a lot personally, but people that I'm associated with, people as far as the revival circle, people
Sure.
involved in that, they have scoured the internet and places and all. Are there any pictures? So I can tell you there's one couple nice pictures in a Beatles book. It's a book on the basically the history of the Beatles with lots of pictures, and the pictures by a gentleman named Bob Bonus, who I do remember.
Oh, yes.
I think he was. Do you know him?
No, I don't know him. I mean, he's passed on, but I know the book
Yeah.
you're talking about. The great book.
Yeah, it's a great book. Anyway, we are actually in the book.
Mm-hmm.
There's a picture of there's a picture of Earl and I on the stage, and there's a picture of Tom and Marty, and you can see the Beatles drums. So at least there's some proof that yes, we were there. And since then, some folks have come up with. There's a picture, and I think it's in L.A. But basically, here it is. Here I am, leaning on the ground. This is on the ground, leaning against the stage, looking towards the camera. And here's George walking across, as if like they either just finished or they're now going to perform.
Okay.
And so there's at least me and George. Now, I'm not with him, I mean, in all fairness, but I'm there. There I am, looking towards the camera. Here's George on the ground, walking across as if he's like either they're just finished or they're going on. And then there's another picture where you can see me from the back. Now, this is looking up at the stage. The Beatles are now on stage performing, and there I am. My back is to the camera, but you can see it's the same guy. The same. I haven't had the same clothes on, so you can clearly see it's me looking up at them. So far as I know, at least, that's as good as we're going to get of any pictures with the Beatles on tour. So we were jerks. Very silly.
there are tapes of several of the shows on that tour, but specifically the San Francisco show. And one of the things that Paul says in the audio is that it was very cold, which is not surprising because if you've ever been to, which I have, to Candlestick Park at night, it gets very, very cold there. Do you remember how cold it was at Candlestick?
I remember chilly. I don't remember like cold as in really, really cold. No, I don't remember. I remember chilly. But it was doable. I mean, you went on and you performed, and once you're performing, it can be pretty cold, and you kind of warm up.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my sense of it. Yeah, it was like foggy cold.
Okay. So the tour ends, and what happened? What happened with you guys after that? You guys did other albums after Neon.
Here's my sense of after the Beatles tour. We just talked about the 15 minutes of fame.
Right.
My sense is that was the beginning of the 15 minutes of fame were over. And just as an example, the first job that we played was, I think it was Mansfield, Ohio, at a club, and almost nobody showed up. It was really like a shock, because here we had just played these thousands and thousands of people, and we're now in Mansfield, Ohio, at a club that, maybe it would have held 300 to 500, something like that, and there were just maybe 30 people there, something like that. That was a shock. So I know that we definitely continued to record, and I remember when we were recording Neon, we really thought that this was really good, and this is a really good album. And we have gotten, we get feedback now that there's really some nice recordings there, but here's my take on getting hit records and fame and all of that kind of stuff. In the mid-'80s, a small record company got the license to release Cyrkle stuff. Now, of course, this is all now oldies, of course.
Are you talking about are you talking about Sundays?
Yeah, Sundays. Yeah, good. Sundays. Yeah, they so they got the license from Columbia, now Sony, to release, and they specialize in these oldies releases,
right?
And they wanted comments, like here's the first CD we're putting out. No, it was actually, I think the first thing was cassettes. It was still cassettes before CDs, and they sent me a cassette, and they wanted comments, and my real take at that time was, been there, done that, hardly even interested. But I thought, all right, let me. They want a comment, I'll give you a comment. So I had a Sony Walkman, and I had the cassette that they gave me, and I on a plane ride with nothing else to do, I thought, let me listen to this. So I put on my headphones, I turn it on, and the first thing, Red Rubber Ball comes on. They did it in somewhat chronological order. Red Rubber Ball comes on, and I had an epiphany in that I always thought Red Rubber Ball was cute, but I didn't think that much of it. I was very pleased that it was a big hit. Anyway, it came on, and the first thing I hear, the lead guitar and the organ that go against each other in the opening, and it just hit me. Oh, my God. How recognizable that is. That really, it sounds like a hit. It actually sounds like a hit. And then I heard the vocal came in, and Tommy and I started out, I should have known you bid me farewell. And then when Tommy comes in, now I know you're not the only starfish in the sea, the blend was just beautiful. And it just hit me. This had the magic ingredients of a hit record. Everything came together in this, and it actually did deserve to be a hit record. And then Turn Down Day comes on, and Turn Down Day, maybe a little less, but similar. Wow. Really recognizable.
That was, if I can interrupt, that's the one thing that when I was listening to the albums, because I was listening to them this morning, you really notice with you guys, your vocal blend was very, I hesitate to use the word commercial, but that's really, given the time and given the way music was at that time, it was very, that's, you guys had it. You guys nailed it down,
Yes, and when I listen now, yes, we really did. I'm amazed. I'm pleased.
What was the difference between, and I was thinking about this morning when I was listening to the album, what was the difference, or what would you say about making music at that point in time? What was it like? Because like I say, your albums reflected that era. Everybody's albums reflected that era, I suppose. But, as an artist, as a musical group, what did you feel you had to do? Does that question make sense?
Well, here, I'll continue with my train of thought, and yes, it kind of does. So, anyway, continuing to listen, here's what I got from continuing to listen now to that cassette. Basically, you could hear that the recordings got a little better, a little more sophisticated. We got better. We got more professional. But as good as they were, they didn't quite have the magic of Red Rubber Ball and Turn Down Day. And my conclusion was that you could take the best writers, the best musicians, the best singers, the best producers, the best arrangements, the best recording studio, the best of everything, and you can make a recording, and here's what you can guarantee. It will be a really good recording. Here is what you can't guarantee. It will be the magic that sets it apart from others to be a hit record. You cannot guarantee magic no matter what you do when you are making a new recording. And sometimes it happens, and sometimes the best still is not that magic to be a new recording. And it was really kind of mind-blowing for me. And what I get was, somehow or other, we never quite got the magic, even though the good recordings, people still request sometimes, but we didn't get the magic of Red Rubber Ball and Turn Down Day as we continued.
Did you, how many albums did you guys do altogether? Was it just
basically 3? We did Red Rubber Ball, Neon, and then we right as we were breaking up, we did the music for a movie called The Minx.
Okay.
And the Minx, my understanding about the Minx is that it never went anywhere, but it has become somewhat of a cult favorite by people.
Okay.
At least some. Yeah.
They have put it,
and that is available it is available on Sundays if anybody's interested.
And there's a live album I saw. Is that legitimate? That's not a bootleg.
Oh yeah, the live album is that is done by the Revival, by our Cyrkle Revival. And let me just let's skip ahead 15
Yeah,
let's skip
because I was going to ask you about that anyway. You guys are now touring again. You're now performing again. When did that start?
Yes. Okay, so this would have been, I think it would have started out in 2016. And basically, bandmate Mike Loskamp, who is the gentleman who replaced Earl when Earl just couldn't stay out of medical school. So in the fall of 1966, Mike Loskamp became a part of the Cyrkle. So he was there. He was there. He's from 1966, and he never stopped playing in bands from the time the group broke up. He had a full-time job. Actually, he worked for AT&T, but he never stopped playing in local bands. He went back to Dayton, Ohio, moved to Columbus, and he played in actually many local bands, but one of the bands he played with regularly was a band called the Gas Pump Jockeys. One of the gentlemen in the Gas Pump Jockeys is Pat McLaughlin, who you have been in touch with.
Who I've been in touch with, yes.
Obviously setting this up.
Yep.
Pat McLaughlin, I call him the go-getter guy. He was a sales manager at AT&T, actually, and successful. And he's retired from there. And he, realizing that Mike Loskamp had been with the Cyrkle, he thought, why can't we be the Cyrkle? Why can't we go, many bands, some of the bands that go out under the name of 60s artists, there's not even any original, but at least here we got one guy. And an agent friend of his said, why don't you get one more guy and we'll book you as the Cyrkle. So Pat actually had a really hard time tracking me down for some reason. It's really kind of funny. Pat actually bought a program to track people down, and he could not track me down. Now, I get fan mail now from as far away as Poland and Russia and to my home. So these people track me down, but Pat couldn't find me. Anyway, finally, with a whole thing, they finally tracked me down and we got in touch. And they asked me, hey, would you be willing to be a part of a revival? Can we be the Cyrkle again? And I'm comfortably retired from my commercial music career. And I'm sitting in the living room with my wife and on this phone call on speakerphone, and she actually gave me the thumbs up, yeah, Don, you should do that. That would be really cool. So, and they were really very accommodating and lovely people, this whole band. They flew me to Columbus, and Pat and his wife Sandy met me, and we had coffee, and we liked each other right off the bat, really good people. And then I met the band, and the band everybody was evidently really nervous because, well, what's it going to be like when he meets Mike again? Because Mike and I hadn't talked in literally 50 years. So anyway, so we go to bandmate Don White's house. He is the lead guitar player of the current revival, and he has a rehearsal studio in his basement. And we were going to, meet and, like have a meal and then play, see how we did. So anyway, so it's like they're all kind of hovering around, and then there's Mike, and like, what's going to be when Don meets Mike? Well, I gave him a hug. How you been? So anyway, so the band turns out to be like a real family. The wives are all involved. The guys are friendly. It was really a lovely atmosphere. And then when we played, it worked out really well. Now, of course, they knew Red Rubber Ball and Turn Down Day, so that was easy. And one of the things that really sort of set the bar for like, wow, we really can be the Cyrkle, and this is really cool. And I didn't realize this myself, but when I thought one song that I thought would be a really cool song to do was the 59th Street Bridge song, "Feelin' Groovy."
Right.
And the story there is we actually had an opportunity to do that. We were in the studio one day, and Simon and Garfunkel are just finishing up, and we're going in. And Paul comes up to me and he says, "Hey, Don, there's a song we are recording on this album, and I think it would be perfect for you guys. And if you want to do it, you could do it immediately. The album won't come out for a while, So anyway, so engineer pushed the button. We hear the song, and everybody is bopping around in the studio, and it does sound like a hit. And then the song ends, and the biggest brain freeze of the 20th century then cuts in, where we looked at each other and we thought, yeah, it is really good, but not now. Maybe we do it in 6 months or something like that. So we didn't do it, and then in the show, we actually play it, and it's like, so ladies and gentlemen, I'll let you decide, did we make a mistake or not, and then we do our own version of Feeling Groovy. Had we done it, here's what it would have sounded like. So anyway, the thing that, I never thought about was when I said, well, let's do Feeling Groovy, and I start playing it and singing it the way I do it, and Pat came up, he says, oh my God, now I see where the Cyrkle sounds like the Cyrkle. Just you doing that with you strumming the guitar the way you do it, that sounds like the Cyrkle. So anyway, so that's part of our show, and we do it as part of a live performance that we did. And the performance, if you want me to keep going,
sure,
is okay. So now here we are. We're now going to revive the Cyrkle.
Mm-hmm.
And we were told, well, if you actually want to get booked, yes, it's a hit group, so you're legitimate, you can get booked, but you got to show that you still can perform. So we were told you need to make a promo video and don't shoot it on your cell phones. It has to be like a real professional job.
Right.
So, once again now, so this is going back to Pat McLaughlin, go-getter guy for the band. He booked a theater. He booked a professional video crew and a sound guy, and we did a concert, which was recorded and filmed. So, now, we were, in all candor, we were not perfect. It was the first time we had played together, live, in a theater. Lots of mistakes, but fixable. And so we did the promo video, and I actually mixed it myself. And I know how to mix from all my commercial careers, and I have a studio at home, and I can do this. And I fixed it, and it's actually pretty good. And if you listen to the live album, I'm pretty proud of how it turned out. So anyway, so we had we now had the promo video, and we were ready to go on the road. Now, still, we needed a booking agent, and we had to get some concerts under our belt where people knew we were okay, we were good. And the first concert that we did which it came about kind of by a fluke, in that it was in Lakewood, New Jersey, and this is now in 2017. I think this might have been early fall of 2017. And the Love and Spoonful had some kind of problem, and they had to, they were the headliners, but they had to cancel because of some kind of problem. And our agent had suggested to the promoter, "Hey, why don't you put the Cyrkle in?" Now we couldn't be the headliners, but we added to the thing, and he changed the show around. I think the big headliner was Gary Puckett and the Union Gap, and the Vogues were on it, and let me think, who else was on it? Don't remember, but it was a good concert. And we opened the show, and we were great. We were short. We played 4 songs. We had a standing ovation, and the promoter was really impressed. His name is Joe Marioni, and we've become really good friends with him now because he's hired us a lot. He's like, we're part of the family. So that got the ball rolling, and we now tour. Yeah, we're out and about.
And I know you were supposed to play both of the Beatle conventions before to let everybody know we're taping this in at the end of March during the coronavirus situation. So your shows have been postponed, but you are going to play. You've both of the Beatle Fests have been rescheduled for the same weekend, which is kind of interesting. October 9th to 11th because of John Lennon's birthday. You're playing Abbey Road on the River, correct? Or are you going to play Are you going to play both, or just Abbey Road on the River?
No, it's going to be just Abbey Road because it's a conflict. We just we can't do it. So evidently, it is my understanding that we are. So we're doing Abbey Road. And it is my understanding that next year, in March, we will be doing the New Jersey Beatles convention.
Okay.
So we are doing that. And we also are doing, for the second year in a row, actually, we're doing the Charlotte Beatles convention. I think it's June. Yeah, we're doing that in June.
Okay. So, but you are going to be doing, are you going to be doing other gigs besides those Beatle conventions? Yes, right?
Oh, yeah. I don't have it in front of me exactly, but I know there are definitely are other bookings that we have.
Okay. And is there I think Pat was talking to me about some kind of a record you guys were recording. Are you guys recording a record now, or?
Yeah, we're recording a new album.
Okay.
Actually. And this actually came about by a photographer named Daniel Costin, who actually he showed up one day. We didn't know him. He lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. He showed up one day at an outdoor concert we were doing. Don't remember the date, but it was a summertime outdoor concert. He says, "Hey, I'm a photographer. Do you mind if I take pictures?" And he took pictures, great pictures, very good photographer. And he decided he actually has become a friend of the group now. So we hang out with him. He'll come sometimes where he can to meet us, and he's actually been to my house. We had him over with. Actually, we set up a dinner. This was my wife's idea. She loves to entertain, so we set up a dinner with Pat and Sandy, Pat and his wife Sandy, Cyrkle Pat and his wife Sandy, Flash Phelps, who we've gotten to be good friends with, right. 60s DJ on satellite,
Sirius XM.
Yeah, Sirius XM with Flash, and then Joe Marioni, the promoter that we've gotten really friendly with, right. And Daniel, the photographer that we've gotten really friendly with, and we had a lovely time. Anyway, Daniel has decided on his own, being now a friend of the group, he says, "You guys have to record a new album." And we weren't particularly interested in recording a new album, but spurred on by Daniel, we actually are starting to do that, and we'll see what comes out of it now. It's been a fun time. The little bit that we have now started to record, it's an interesting bonding experience with the band because playing together is different from recording together. There's kind of a different vibe, and we're having a good time doing it. So we'll see what comes out.
Is your music has your music developed? Is it different? Is it going in different areas than what you did before, or are you basically staying along the same lines, or what?
No, I think. Well, not everything. It's not in stone yet, but it looks like to me, it's going to be somewhat eclectic. And what Daniel said to us, he said, "You know what? You guys should record. You should think of this as doing suppose the Cyrkle recorded a new album in 1968. What might you have done?"
Right.
And so so it's not as though we literally have to say, "Here's 1968," but it's like what interests you that might be interesting to record and to hear. We actually did Feelin' Groovy.
I was going to ask you if you were going to do that. So.
Yeah. Well, it is already on the live album, and it will be. Yeah, the studio version will be on this because we did do that. We actually had a request from some folks to redo Red Rubber Ball and Turn Down Day, similar to the originals, but a new recording. So we did that. I know that bandmate Mike Loskamp has written a few songs that he thought would be an interesting thing for the album, and they are actually not what you would think of as original, the original Cyrkle type stuff, but it's a little bit Mike has a sort of a Steely Dan influence, and I think it'll be interesting to see how they turns out. They're partially done now, and that'll be sort of interesting to see how that goes. But
when are you looking to? Have you got a timeline for the release of it yet, or no?
No, there's not an actual timeline, and we'll just kind of take it as it comes. As we're able to get together and come up with here's what we want to record. So far, it's in the works, but no, there's not a release date or a timeline to it.
Okay. Now, speaking of revivals, you've done something on your own, and it's just come out in the past few days, I think.
Yeah.
And you've done a new. Kind of a new version of Red Rubber Ball related to the coronavirus situation. Talk about that. Well,
basically, here we are quarantined, and I had been talking to Sandy McLaughlin, Pat's wife, about, maybe I should just record a video, saying, "Hey guys, hope everybody's safe and well, and we're so sorry that things have gotten canceled, and we're so looking forward to getting back." And so, thinking about that, I thought, I could do something better and just maybe more interesting or more fun. Let me see what I can come up with. And so I was just. My wife actually had been asking me, "Don, you know what? You should record a song for the grandkids since we're not seeing them, like everybody's quarantined." And she goes and she's coming up with, things that I could sing. So we came up with some people have done like the Wheels on the Bus, but with Corona lyrics, Well, no, excuse me, not Wheels on the Bus. The Baby Shark, Baby Shark, that one. It's a kid's song that everybody knows. So instead, it was like wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. So here I am preparing to do this wash your hands song. I was going to put my cell phone and set it up with some nice background in my studio. And while we're at it, I thought, hey, maybe I'll do this Red Rubber Ball thing, and I'll come up with Corona lyrics to Red Rubber Ball. So while I'm set up to do the kids, let me do a Red Rubber Ball thing, which will, satisfy Sandy, who asked me to do a video, and see how that turns out. So that's basically the origin from it. So I'm sitting around, we're watching TV, and I'm thinking, well, let's see, Corona is here, it's blah, 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 like that. So there you go. We have the coronavirus video, the Red Rubber Ball coronavirus video.
And it's really cute. And I'm thank you for allowing me to use the audio, because we're going to include the audio in this show. It's very nice. It's very nicely done.
Well, thank you so much. It was fun to do, and if I'm so pleased that it turned out okay, because you never know if you're just sitting with a guitar with a cell phone video, but it actually turned out okay. So yeah, thank you.
One thing that I was going to ask you when you mentioned your grandkids, how I remember the stories of hearing how Julian Lennon was aware of John being a Beatle. How aware are your grandkids of you and your musical past? Do they know that their grandfather is a star?
They don't quite get star so much as Grandpa plays guitar and sings. They certainly know that.
Do they know when the song comes on the radio that they know that's Grandpa's song?
Well, of course, they're not going to be listening to the '60s channel, but I know that our daughter, will have it on sometimes, and it'll come on. So yeah, they're aware of that. Cool. They have a rough awareness of the fact that Grandpa had a hit record.
Well, that's got to be cool. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Here is Don Dannemann of The Cyrkle and his update of Red Rubber Ball that we mentioned in the program.
Hey guys, Don Dannemann of The Cyrkle, sitting home, quarantined like everybody else, and thinking, I need to have a little bit of fun on something. So, what do you think about this? Corona is here, she invaded our space, but we're gonna wipe her out by washing hands and face, and keeping distance from each other, no more kiss and hug, and coughing in our elbow. We're gonna beat that bug, and I think it's gonna be alright. Darkness comes before the light, the sun will soon be shining like a red rubber ball. Oh, I think it's gonna be alright. Darkness comes before the light, the sun will soon be shining like a red rubber ball. Oh yeah, let's stay healthy.
And that's it for today. We want to give a special thanks to Don Dannemann of The Cyrkle for talking with us and giving us such a delightful interview. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Facebook in our Beatles News and Information group, and you can also check out our That's What I Want Beatles store page for the best Beatle bargains around. We hope you'll be with us next time. Be sure to subscribe. We're available wherever podcasts are found. There we go. Till next time, this is Steve Marinucci saying,
Be seeing you.
Keep that one. Mark it fab.